Yeah, I'm thinking to ordain, planning to ordain, and I'm wondering, do you have any advice, like Ajahn was saying recently that you often say that to be like a diligent monk, just robes and a lot to use the expression like he just doesn't get it, even though he's been practicing well. So in this way, like, is there any advice you would give me? Is there any common kind of mistakes that people make?
Well, it's like Buddhism is a convention. You know, how you use it's up to you. You can use it, you know, it's unskillfully, and then the result is it's not liberating. So the encouragement is to use it skillful, what it's meant to be used for. Like the whole point of the Buddhist teaching is liberation from ignorance. And but sometimes we can, you know, you meet Buddhist monks who operate from strong views and very divisive, and you know, they end up, you know, creating themselves and forming and causing a lot of division and confusion in the world. But it's not because they're Buddhist monks, because they're using the convention unskillfully. Like a Buddha Rupa, you know, a Buddha image, it's created for, you know, as an icon of peace and encouragement and inspiration. But I could take a Buddha Rupa and knock you on the head with it, kill you. But that's not what it's made for. So it's up to me what I do, you know, whether I use it for, you know, to help me and be mindful, or use it as a weapon that harms others. So, you know, like, I was very fortunate in my monastic life, because I met Nungpa Cha, and he was a very skilled teacher, and he was very good at helping me understand the value of monastic life. Before I didn't know much about monastic life, and I was interested in meditation only. And so monastic life was more, I liked the idea of it, but you know, I didn't know how, a lot of the Vinaya seemed so complicated and fussy, and I didn't quite get the point of a lot of it at first. But then, you know, over the years I began to see how to use the structure for mindfulness. How not to just dismiss Vinaya because I think it's fussy and it's unnecessary like some monks do, or to just become obsessed with it and grasp it too much where I can't see beyond it. And this is where, like, mindfulness gives you that perspective, you know, your own personal tendencies to use this tradition. You know, how can I, you know, you're a different person, you have a different nature than I do, so all I can do is encourage you, but the main encouragement is awakened attention, mindfulness, and then you see if you are using the form wrongly, or if it's creating more problems for you or others, or if you know, if being a monk you know, is causing you distress, you can blame it on the monastic system, or maybe you just change your attitude towards it. Because like a Western, like coming from West Coast America in 1966, you know, I'm from, you know, I was at the University of California, so you're in an environment where it's all totally free and do what you want, no boundaries, you know, and the drug scene was growing, and a very tolerant, open society, and what is being free to experience life, whatever, you know, and then coming to Wat Pah Pong in Isan, where it's the most conservative, traditional monastery in Thailand, where it's all structured and you have to do it this way and not that way, and you have to conform. And I always saw myself as a nonconformist, and then suddenly I'm in the most conforming form that you could possibly create. You know, very traditional, very structured, very strict in the form, and of course it brought up all kinds of strong emotions that I never had in California. But the aim of Luang Por Chah was to observe, you know, because I couldn't understand the language. At first I didn't understand Isan dialect or Bangkok Thai either. So I just have to sit there and listen to Ajahn Chah go on for 5 hours, you know, and almost every evening. And of course you're sitting like this, papir, and at first, if you're not used to doing that, it's very painful, and I never sat like that in California, and so I had a lot of aversion and anger, and Ajahn Chah said right from the beginning, your practice is developing patience. And I agreed with him, because I realized patience is not a virtue in the States. It's like, if you want something, you get it now, you don't have to wait. And then Wat Pah Pong in those days was very primitive, very basic, and it was all about waiting and being patient and knowing your place, the most junior monk in the line, and all the things that would grate against my cultural conditioning. And the only way I could really deal with it was I could leave. Nobody was forcing me to stay there, but I could also. I trusted Luang Por Chah, so and then his teaching, even though I didn't understand his talks. Yet he was good at getting you to look at yourself, and I could do that. So by doing that, looking at my impatience and anger and all that, I developed more patience. So I developed a lot of trust in Ajahn Chah, because he wasn't telling me that I had to do things and it wasn't scaring me. He was encouraging me to develop qualities that are necessary for understanding reality in a situation that was very different from what I'd ever lived in before. But the thing that I liked about it was that I felt I was living a good life. I admired monks like that, like Luang Por Chah and the monks that I trained with. They were admirable. The way they lived and their commitment impressed me. And coming from a hedonistic life, I didn't feel that respect for hedonistic people. The kind of free spirits in Berkeley could be charming and entertaining, but I didn't really respect it. And I didn't respect myself for living like that. So then the more and more living with Luang Por Chah, I began to develop respect for what I'm doing and a kind of gratitude. And then the whole form that was presented, I began to understand it better as I developed it and used it, and saw how to use it.
So how would you say to use it? Because for me, I must admit, some of the Vinaya, like you say about fasting, there's so many rules, but I see also they must be beneficial, there must be some reason, and I guess they help with mindfulness, but some of it does look a bit too much. But I was going to also just go on, and because the whole structure of the life looks like you say good, and definitely we're going to develop patience and sometimes kind of trying.
Well, just like with Vinaya, just accept the totality of it, and try to operate within that structure, and just observe your own doubt or rebelliousness or attachment, and then we can become so strict in Vinaya that we're always looking at other monks to see that they're keeping it. And we can get very angry if we see a monk breaking a rule. Then we know we're too attached to it. So you always, it works both ways. You can become fastidious and obsessed with trying to make everyone conform to being too lax, where everything's okay. But then the point of the Vinaya is awareness, awaken. So I found the attitude was to observe myself. I conform to the Vinaya as best I can wherever I'm at. And then as I learned it with Luang Por Chah, and even in England, that's the Vinaya I tried to develop there. But also, the aim was not to just create a Ajahn Chah cult in England, but to use it as a skillful tool to be aware of your own mental states. Because like being confined, being limited in action and speech, if you're from a society, from a life where there aren't any limits, then that limitation can be incredibly make one very angry or rebellious or frightened. So these are all mental states that arise. And then this awareness of them is just to be aware, not to think that you should feel any other thing, but observe what you are feeling. And then the training within, like here at Nanacharya, that is just to conform to the Vinaya. So they aren't asking you to do anything bad. You're not ever asked to do something that is unwholesome. Sometimes you don't particularly want to do what you have to or what they want you to do, but you're not doing anything bad. And then but the main point is to observe the state of mind. And then 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 you become a Vinaya fanatic, then you're always trying to make everybody else do it. And that's a very unpleasant mental state, to be always looking at somebody else, worried they're going to do it wrong. And you look at that, that's a very miserable kind of mental state in your own mind. So you just keep learning how to use forms like that. Because Dhamma is formless. It's all about letting go, It's the ultimate freedom, letting go, freedom, not attached to anything. And in America, they love that, they think we're just a bunch of screwed up, attached, repressed, anal retentive freaks. Because we're strict in the Vinaya. Or because Dhamma is about freedom, and it's about letting go, non-attachment. But then, in a traditional form, it's when the Buddha was passing on, And his attendant, Ananda, said, "What will we do when you're dead, when you're gone? Who will teach us? We won't have any teacher." And Buddha says, "I leave you the Dhamma." And then he said, "The Vinaya." The Vinaya is all this form, rules from severe things to little things. And so then in the West, like in Britain, they love Dhamma teaching, but Vinaya is not highly appreciated because it goes against this idea of freedom. It's about restraint and restriction. But at my age now, you realize the wisdom behind that, because freedom this realm is like this. It's not a free realm. We've got so much pressures on us just from the aging process, from loss, from the changing weather, the climate change, the political changes, economic problems, family problems, personal crises, and on like that. Where's the freedom? We've always got tension, stress in our lives. And that's what people talk about now, is stress. They even interpret the First Noble Truth, some monks, as stress. Because stress is, with all the fantastic technology, it creates more stress. And like this morning, my iPad, the internet, the Wi-Fi didn't work. I could feel stress that I never felt when I didn't have an iPad. So it's a wonderful thing. You have an iPad. It's a kind of magical instrument, but also is a condition that creates stress. Because you become, you want to touch it and it works, and then you just go on, but then you don't quite do what you want, or pack up, or don't connect, and then you feel this. The important thing is to be aware of it, because this realm is about stress. And then in monastic life, we can create stress around that too, worrying about our purity, and there's a lot of resentments and jealousies. It's based on who's senior to who. And then there's creates a lot of egotistical problems. That monk senior to me is hopeless. I'm better than he is. But it's all part of the practice. It's not like becoming a monk changes you into a saint. It puts you in a vehicle to carry you, to restrain you, hold you, until you can observe more what ultimate liberation really is. And it's all about here. It's not about building the best monastery where every monk, every nun is wonderful. It's about freeing yourself from delusion here and now. And that you can do. You can't create a perfect monastery. Wherever monastery you go to, you'll find a lot of things you don't like. And a lot of things you like. So it's just the way the world is. And like wanting, like American culture is about ideals. It's about how things should be. So you're very much aware of how things should be, and you can create an ideal in your mind which is perfect. About a political system that's totally fair and just, and a society where everybody's equal, and that, like communism was in the previous century, was offering that. It's kind of ideal idealism carried to a high level, and but it wasn't based on Dhamma, on reality. It was based on human ability to create ideals. But this is not an ideal realm. This is the way it is. It's a changing realm. It's not what it should be, but it is the way it is. So like mindfulness then is your ability to observe that, to not to always try to change it to fit, to try to conform to some idea you have, but more aware of the way things actually are and what being human is, what being a man is, what being a monk is like this. And it's not about becoming anything, it's about recognizing. Then the form itself, since we all agree to it, the Bhikkhu Sangha, so we're all agreed to live within this restraint, then we have a lot of, it's very bonding in its own way. You can trust it. Living in a Buddhist monastery, you can take a lot for granted. The people in it are doing their best to be honest and trustworthy. In a society that people are paranoid and suspicious. Have I convinced you?
Yeah, you can answer it, don't you?
I'd be a good salesman, wouldn't I?
Yeah, I was thinking also, I was in Monastic for almost 4 months, and I found nobody said anything a bad word about you. You seemed to have done a good job.